Welcome back to the Life of Tashmia. I'm Tash. Today we have Ania from Som. She's a tantric massage therapist, and we're going to discuss all things tantra massage, talk about the differences between tantra and kink, and also there's quite a lot of similarities. We're going to talk about pleasure and why we find it so hard. So thanks, Ania, for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So just give us a bit of a background into how you came across becoming a tantric practitioner. It's not every day you find someone who's a tantric masseuse.
No, it was very serendipitous and by chance, actually. I was living in Berlin at the time, and I was actually looking for an erotic massage experience for my partner and I. And doing my research, I came across this beautiful Tantra studio in the heart of Berlin, and it all sounded really interesting on the website. So I booked us in, and the massage itself was actually in separate rooms, which I thought was really interesting. But they were like, it's better because you'll feel more free doing it that way. You won't be worrying about each other, that you're having a good time. And so we went along with that, and yeah, what I experienced was just like mind blowing. I wasn't prepared for it. It was this coming together of mind, body, and spirit, and it actually helped to dissolve a lot of shame that I felt around my sexuality as well, which I'd been carrying for a long time. And what was left was just this like really beautiful pulsing kind of vibration of intense energy around my body. And I now understand that to be Kundalini. But at the time, I was just like mind blown. I was completely speechless. And I had no idea that that level of sensation was possible purely through touch as well. So I was like, I need to learn this. So what's just happened? And luckily the studio I went to had a school attached. So I enrolled, and yeah, the rest is kind of history.
I think it's lovely that you mentioned they said go in separate rooms. A lot of people think tantra, they think of two people doing tantra, especially I think if you don't know a lot about tantra, we think about, movies and like people being really romantic and these tantra like date nights and everything. But essentially at the core, it's really such an internal journey that we need to take. How did you find that journey was for you? Was it difficult that you mentioned you had some shame you had to find? Were you aware of that prior? Did it release for you? Did it make you have to do more work on it?
Yeah, that was really just the beginning. And yes, you're right. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what Tantra is, and often we see it in the context of relationships and sex, but it's a much more holistic practice. And Tantra as a practice is really about helping us to become more embodied. So, having an awareness of our bodies and sensation and being really present. And I think that's why often it is used as a tool in relationships, because it's very congruent with like building intimacy, but it does all start with you having that connection to yourself, which then opens up to having those deep connections with other people. So yeah, gosh, I had this massage 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And it has been a journey since then of really getting to know myself in a new way. Like I had really, I was always a very sensual person, but it didn't necessarily feel embodied. Like that was, my sensuality was something that I expressed in the bedroom, but it wasn't something that I knew how to express generally in life. And I think as well, because there was so much shame around it, and because there was no kind of support or education around or embrace around our sexuality growing up, the way that I knew to express my sensuality was very sexual. But I think the thing about Tantra is that it has a much more like open view of what our sexual energy is, or what our erotic energy is. It's, it's not just something that we express in a sexual context, but our eroticism and our sexual energy is our source of vitality and creativity, and the thing that really makes us feel alive and connected with other people. And so I think my journey with this practice has been really about learning how to integrate that as a part of myself and learn how to express this part of myself in a way that feels very free and authentic and natural, and I think a lot of people don't have that ability either, because our sensuality is often so sexualized. Yeah.
I love that, the difference between like sensuality and sexuality. And you're right, a lot of people put that in the bedroom or a corner or a special place in their life. And I think when you incorporate it in a greater essence of your life, whether it's in your work, whether it's in your social relations, no matter where else you share that with, some people I think can find it a little confronting when it's not kept in that box. Because as you said, we've been trained to like, sexuality goes there.
Yeah.
But I love that about the life force that we take from sexual energy and how much it can actually give us if we just let it. It doesn't have to stay in that box. It doesn't just have to be for one person in one certain location 2 times a week or whatever it is. You can actually incorporate it in your whole life. But I do find, because I'm someone that I use a lot of my sensual energy in my work and in my brand and in what I do, there's some people that just find it so confronting and they get quite angry about it sometimes, which to me just flags that they've got their work to do on it. But it is something I have seen people just find it, oh wait, that's too much. It's too sensual. It's too in your face. It needs to be somewhere else where I don't see it.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, well, that's your problem. That's not mine.
Yeah. It can be confronting, and it can also like be a bit, put people off guard, or because there's a power in embracing your sexuality and your sensuality and really, living through that. And when someone doesn't know how to do that, it can, it's almost like there's a power struggle that comes with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if you're able to embrace that sensuality and sexuality, it also, I don't think you can be well. We talk about, wellness. I don't think you can be well if you're denying that part of yourself. We talk about diet and exercise and meditation and all these things. And it's very much a conversation at the moment, the wellness industry. And I'm like, there's that sexuality and that side of it, and your sensuality is such a big component. And I don't believe that you as a human can be well in the traditional term of the word if you're not embracing this side of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what I also love about Tantra. And, I knew nothing about the spiritual or philosophical side of Tantra when I first had the massage. But the more I've learnt about it, it's, one of the only spiritual practices that really embraces our sexuality as a normal and natural part of the human experience. And I think that's what really drew me into this work as well, is that I now can create these spaces for people to integrate and to express their sexuality really freely without feeling ashamed of their desires and their needs. And it's such an important part of ourselves. And I think it's like slowly shifting. I think I'm definitely seeing more and more people being open to this practice and like sex work in general, and the work that you do as well. You might have your own views, but it seems like something's shifting in society around being more open to sex and our sexuality, and realizing, okay, this isn't something that we need to be ashamed of, or that's just kind of hidden behind closed doors, but let's, embrace it somehow so that it doesn't then manifest in other harmful ways.
I definitely agree. There's definitely becoming a shift. And I think, it has helped a lot with like social media, and a lot of people, especially people who have credentials. Like I've seen a few, doctors who have gone into the sexuality expert fields, And so people that you would traditionally see as like conservative experts and, you know, kind of opening up. And I think that's actually helped, having people kind of breach that gap between the traditional maybe sex worker and maybe someone you would see traditionally in another role, and those people actually coming closer together. And I think that has really helped people maybe open up a bit more. I still think we have a long way to go. And I think sometimes, I know especially with myself, I live in, and I've said this before, I live in a bit of a box, like, well, not I live in a box, but my social circle can be a little bit deceptive of what the world is like, because my circle is, and my work, because I think the people that come to see me, they've already stepped over something that most people have. As you said, like, not everyone feels that they can book in to see a professional, a therapist, or what I do. So they're already one step ahead of probably most people. And again, you know, with my social circle, they're very open-minded. Otherwise, you probably couldn't be friends with me. They're very accepting. There's no judgment. So my everyday life, that's what I see the world to be. And then occasionally I'm reminded that not everyone is in that view. And, you know, I have made some people very angry with what I do. And as I said, I see that more on them than me. But yeah, I think there is a shift. You also mentioned, you know, the safe space that you provide, and that safe space for people to be vulnerable, which is something I do see a lot of overlap with BDSM and what I do. You know, I provide a safe space for and a vessel to do this work, to embrace yourself. And there's so much power when people are able to be vulnerable. And I think it's really important that people see that as power. Like, vulnerability is power. You know, before, people I think maybe used to see it as weakness. But there's so much strength you can gain from being vulnerable, and so much change in your life and who you are and the potential of who you can be when you do that.
Totally. Yeah.
With your clients, what's some of the biggest struggles you see present in the room with you, or things that people find difficult to accept?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's so many things, but I think often, like, it really comes down to two things. There's like a power thing, or it's shame driven, the struggle. So, and the power thing is very much connected to not wanting to be vulnerable. So it's like, you know, people are very much trapped in that performative way of expressing their sexuality, which we've learnt from porn and, you know, whatever else. And it's like you said, you know, the only way I think that you can break down that that armor that people put up, or help someone to release shame, is by making them feel seen, by creating a space that's not judgmental, and a space that feels very safe. Because without that, you know, yeah, you don't feel like you can really open up and let go and surrender. Yeah.
So when people are finding it hard to surrender, I'm curious, are you aware of it when it's happening? Like, are there signs? Like,
yeah, it's all in the body language. Yeah, all in the body language. Like, it's, you know, people are very tense. They don't want to make eye contact. Their sexual expression is very inhibited. And, you know, Tantra is very much about helping someone to be more embodied. And what that means is really connected to your body and living through your senses and allowing yourself to move and make sounds and really express yourself. And that's what our sexual energy is. It's very creative. It's very expressive. But because people feel ashamed of that, it's, you know, we tense up and we close off and we bottle everything in, and you know, sometimes people just lie there, and it's like slowly kind of helping them to take a big breath, take an audible breath, you know, sigh, move your body a little bit, like allow this energy to kind of move you, and yeah, really feel that expression, because the expression as well is what amplifies the pleasure. Sound creates a vibration in the body. It moves cells, it moves energy. Movement moves energy as well. So all these things are naturally there to, create a more pleasurable experience. But because of we feel embarrassed or ashamed about the sounds we make or the way our body moves or the way we express, so much of that is just bottled in because it doesn't align with what we've seen in porn. Yeah. Or we think we need to look and sound like what we've seen in porn.
I guess that links back to your point about it, the performative aspect of sex that we've grown up with. And I think, especially women in my view, have grown up to perform in sex or grown up to give, to do the blowjob, to get in certain positions, to how's my stomach looking right now? And they're not concentrating on what's happening to them, or they're not concentrating on their pleasure, or what headspace are they in? They're letting their head. What are they feeling? Whoever they're with, are they liking this? Do I look good from this angle? Am I doing a good job? And I think you're right, that performative aspect of it is so hard for people to let go of and to get out of their head in that regards, and to not think about what noises am I making. It's very difficult. And I see, but being a therapist and reading that is so important. And that's another similarity I see with BDSM as well is my position to read what the submissive in my case is going through. With BDSM relationships, obviously, if you're in the power dynamic of a dom and a sub, or a dominant and a submissive, you will learn to read each other. Especially if you're coming at it from a relationship point of view, and even in a professional point of view, I have to learn to read my clients. And you're right, if someone's body goes stiff, that tells me something, because not everyone will use their safe words. A lot of people will try and push it, or there's a myriad of reasons why people don't use their safe words. But I always find it my job is I need to read it anyway. Yeah. Like, I need to read before they say orange, or definitely before they go to a red. And I can do that through what's their breath doing. Tell them to take deeper breaths. Tell them to belly breathe. Stop shallow breathing. And you can tell, you're right, expressions on their face, like where people are at, you can read it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of that is a lot of people aren't even aware of what their body's doing. And that's a big reason why people come and see me as well, is because they feel disconnected from their bodies. But research in interpersonal relationships actually has found that like 70% of our communication is nonverbal. That's like a really significant amount. And when you're not connected to your body, you're not aware of your body language or the feedback that your body's giving you from your environment, from, the experiences that you're in, from your emotions. And so I think that's part of our job, is to really be really attuned to what that person is experiencing through reading their body language, because they may not even be aware of what their body's telling them.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think you're right. A lot of people aren't aware of what that mind-body connection, for a lot of people, I think, gets broken. When we think about people receiving Lingam and yoni massage, I don't think everyone actually knows what it is, or what those terms possibly mean. Could you just run through what actually happens in a session?
Yeah. So a Lingam has actually many different understandings or interpretations, but in this context, we're referring to penis. And the yoni is a vulva and womb space. And in Tantra, these are kind of seen as sacred gateways to our life force energy. And I think I mentioned earlier, life force energy is the thing that makes us feel alive and vital and connected. And so during a tantric lingam and yoni massage, we touch this part of the body with great care and respect and reverence, and it's almost like an honoring process. And this really creates a space for someone to experience their sexual energy in a completely new way. Often I find that, and we're all guilty of this, but we can become very habitual in the way that we touch ourselves. We can be very goal-oriented toward orgasm. And, you know, while there's nothing wrong with that, that can actually be a trigger sometimes for performance anxiety. It can make us feel like there's something wrong with us if our body's not responding the way that we want it to. And it can also be an inhibitor of greater pleasure because we're just so focused on the goal. So in a tantric massage, we slow everything right down. It's very sensual. It's almost like, you know, I encourage people to treat it like any other part of the body. And when you do so, the experience can become so much more expansive and interesting. We also guide someone through a process of edging. So in that, you're taking someone close to orgasm without actually getting them over the line. And the intention behind that is just to simply build up that erotic energy in the body so that it has a chance to, you know, transcend the genitals and kind of circulate around the whole body. Because often people's experience of sexual pleasure is just kind of trapped in their genitals. They don't really feel it in anywhere else, any part of the body. So in a tantric massage, we're really using that slow, intentional touch. There's breath that comes into it. There's placement of awareness, all these things to kind of encourage that energy to flow throughout the body and give you a new experience with that energy. One that feels like really nurturing and revitalizing, you know?
Not depleting.
Not depleting.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, you know, it's to explain it to people who haven't experienced it, because I know myself, like I've never had much of a problem knowing how to make myself like orgasm. And I even refer to someone that was like, you know, cheat orgasms where I just like think something really dirty or watch some porn and I feel like it's a bit of a cheat. Or I call them now, I think, cheat orgasms because I know what the other one is. Or what the full body, like kundalini circulating through my body energy feels like. But to explain that to someone who hasn't experienced it or isn't thinking it's for them, I think can be very difficult to make people understand there's this different level of pleasure that you can actually achieve, and you can achieve it without watching porn or without even doing much at all. And how much energy that can give you instead of that depletion. That can sometimes come, I think, after when we're really forcing ourselves to reach that orgasm or whatever it's about. And I think when we approach, you know, me and my partner, when we approach doing, you know, yoni and lingam massages, I've really, well, thanks to my Tantra practice, understood it's not about, the goal is not orgasm. If you get there, great, but that's not the goal. Where I think if you asked me quite a few years ago, orgasm was so essential to my sexuality and my sex ego, if that makes sense. Like if my partner can't come, that's a reflection on me. Like, and they haven't enjoyed themselves. Yeah. But now I realize, like, actually there is so much enjoyment and pleasure that's not even related to the orgasm. Do you find that in your sessions with people, they have one, that people might not understand the level of pleasure they can achieve through it. And two, they're just so driven by these preconceived notions of what sexuality or their sex experience should be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I have to remind people of when they first come into the studio is that, you know, try and bring a quality of openness and curiosity to this practice rather than being kind of having too many expectations about what you might experience, because yes, you can become attached to an idea of what you might feel or attached to feeling like you have to have an orgasm for this to be a good experience. But that's such a limiting belief. And, you know, throughout the practice as well, I'm having to kind of remind someone to, when I'm noticing that maybe they're chasing something, it's like, okay, let's slow down, let's take a breath, pause, move your awareness around the body, to try and help someone to kind of just melt more into the experience as opposed to feeling like they're moving in one particular direction with it. But yeah, it's, you know, it's natural for us to want to finish with a kind of climax, but it's a practice of kind of being curious and noticing when you're attaching to that and then letting that go and shifting your mindset and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's definitely something that comes up a lot in my work.
I find, and maybe I have a bit of a biased view, but I find that women in particular have a lot of a hard time just receiving. And, me and my husband are seeing a third person at the moment. And, a few weekends ago, we were having a play and I said, because my husband gives amazing yoni massages, just sit there and get a yoni massage from him. Don't do anything. Just close your eyes, get your head to thinking about what's going on, in your body, and just get your head and mind to the pleasure. If it wanders, bring it back. And she just after she'd sit there and she'd kind of do it, and then you'd feel her hand or something. And I'm like, you're not doing it. And I'm like, stop doing things, stop trying to give, just receive. And she's like, this is so hard. And I'm like, and I find it really easy because I've trained myself I'm like, I can just receive now. But I think for a lot of women in particular, I see they're so used to being the giver, especially in their life, the nurturer at work or whatever the roles they play. It's a lot of and I think also socially conditioned to be the giver. And again, in a sexual practice as well, a lot of the times. Do you find that as well? Women do have a hard time accepting that pleasure?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the hardest part is actually getting women to book a session as well. That's a big barrier. And I think for the reasons that you just described of feeling like we play the nurturing role in society, we're often the ones giving naturally. It's just an instinctual sort of thing that we do, that maybe we feel like we're not worthy of it, or it feels indulgent. And so we deny ourselves that pleasure. And I think as well, in a sexual context, often it feels like our sexuality isn't something for us to enjoy, but for someone else to enjoy. And so when I do work with women, it's really trying to create that space for them to just receive, because it's so rare for anyone, actually, not just women, but for people in general, to have a space where there's no expectation on them to have to give anything back. It's just all about you receiving. And there's something about that which is so nurturing and, fulfilling, because, giving's great. It does make us feel good as well. And it can bring out really great qualities in us, generosity and empathy and kindness. But if we're always in that role, then you become depleted and you can burn out. And in the context of a relationship, it can lead to things like resentment and bitterness and disconnection and feeling unsatisfied in your relationship. So I do always encourage people to notice, what role are you playing mostly? And it's interesting. I actually survey a lot of people when they come in, and I ask them, what do you prefer, giving or receiving? And 90% of the time the answer is giving. Because giving, makes us feel good. It also puts us in a position of power and control, because we don't have to be so vulnerable when we give. But receiving, on the other hand, is quite a vulnerable space to be in, because you're acknowledging that you have certain needs and desires. And with that, you might feel judged for having those desires. It can trigger feelings of feeling unworthy. We might feel indebted to someone for giving to us. So there's so many complexities around receiving in general, that, it's really important to notice, where are you at? Are you allowing yourself to receive? Because if not, then maybe it's important to put some more focus on that. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things I love about Tantra is the division of roles when we are practicing with someone. And you did this even at the workshop I attended that you ran, of here's 7 minutes. I know we're just doing it in a short time, but me and my partner do this with nights. It's your night tonight, it's my night tonight. So you don't have to feel like you have to give anything. So it's here's 7 minutes for you to be the receiver. Okay, now it's 7 minutes for you to be the giver. And so there's no expectation during that time to do anything else. And that's one thing I actually really value from Tantra, is that I'm in the receiver position oh, okay, now I'm into the giver position. And again, we can see the overlap with BDSM when we've got the dominant and the submissive, you know, in which position are you being the giver and the leader, or are you being the receiver? Obviously, I think in BDSM, they're a little bit more defined, unless you're in someone who's doing a switch of power of dominant and submissive back between each of the partners. I think in general, just going back to what we're talking about with pleasure, I think in general, society has a hard time accepting pleasure. I think we're very, I feel like we're getting to be a very driven society and very achievement focused, especially again with social media, and we're seeing people do this, do that, I want this. And people are very motivated, and I do think people are doing a lot more self-work to better themselves. And I think there is also almost that, like, if I book in for a session, it's so self-indulgent. If I'm allotting an hour or 2 hours of my day to receive pleasure, that's too much. And I think you're right. As a society, we still have so much more to accept from pleasure. And as you said, it can give us so much. It's life force. Do you see a struggle with clients, like even just coming back because they feel like, oh, it's too much pleasure? Do they ever get to that, oh, it's too much? I can't accept this?
No, I think because people really, when they experience it, they realized, oh, wow, okay, this is
what
much
I was missing.
This is so much more than what I was expecting. Like it's really, yes, it's a pleasurable experience, but that's the kind of what am I trying to say here? The pleasure is a small part of it. Like there's so much more to tantric massage, which I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, I think there's a common misconception that tantric massage is just kind of another erotic massage experience where it is just about pleasure. But what someone actually comes out with is a really nourishing and revitalizing experience. Like, we live in such a stressful society. We're so busy all the time, that those 2 hours that someone's in my studio, it's like, you release so much tension, so much emotional baggage that you might be carrying. And people leave with this kind of this glow on their face. It's like a spark has been reignited, and there's this like quiet confidence and calm and peace about them. And that's so much more than just pleasure, and I think so once people realize that, it's like, oh no, I need this.
And it's, again, I see similarities with, BDSM sessions, the benefits of your practice far beyond the actual session. And also it's giving you skills. Again, your practice will give you the skills of communication, of negotiation. Like there's a lot of skills that you learn with how to switch your brain off. A lot of people practice BDSM for meditative purposes. And as you said, people have very stressful lives these days. And so when they come for that 2 hours, they're able to let that go. And so the benefit is not just what's happening in that session, but the benefit actually we take with us in our everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another part is that, people are so disconnected from their bodies. And one of the things that I do in my sessions is help people to reconnect to their bodies. Like touch is one of the most effective ways of bringing our awareness back into the body and really noticing sensation. And that's really important for so many different reasons because, so many people live in their head and feel disconnected from their body, and we perceive through our senses. Like we need to be in connection to our bodies to be able to connect with other people, to be aware of what emotions feel like in our bodies. And that's, really important for our relationships as well, because if we're feeling more in our body, we can feel more from others. We feel deeper connection and intimacy. We can become more empathetic because it's like, I know what you're feeling. I know what you're going through. I can read your body language. And so, there are so many like subtleties to the practice and so many unexpected benefits of what, what tantric massage and practicing embodiment in general can offer. Yeah.
What are some really common misconceptions that you encounter, maybe as a practitioner of when you tell people this is what I do, or just of Tantra in general? What are some of the biggest ones that you find?
I think, like I said before, that tantric massage is just like another erotic massage. But of Tantra in general, I think people think it's just something like about sex, tantric sex. But yeah, it's so much more than that. It's a very holistic practice that is really focused on presence and getting people more connected to their bodies, and that has so many wonderful benefits and implications for our lives in general and in our relationships. Yeah
you're right. I think, again, with BDSM, we're talking about some similarities today. People think it's just a sexual practice, and as I said, 40% of people practice for stress relieving purposes. So for them, it's not about sex. And there's a lot of different reasons why people practice. So when I do an intake of a client, and even with a regular client, because it can change on a day-to-day basis, is what is your intention for practice, or what is your intention today? So some people will be like, I had a really shitty day at work and I just want to get out of my head, or I want to play. And so I think it's really important, for people to understand that these practices isn't just rooted in getting off or being sexy or whatever it is. I think there's a bit, too much focus on that side of it. It's actually about something, where is my head and where am I going? I think that's a really good point. What benefits have you witnessed either in yourself or in clients from, starting your journey to where you are now? Like, what transformations that have been really powerful that you've witnessed?
Yeah, I think for myself in general, I could have never expected what was to come from my first tantric massage. And at that time, I had no idea about the philosophy. But the more I went into it, it was like just helping me to integrate a really important part of myself. And that in turn gave me more confidence, self-acceptance. I think I became a better lover and a better partner. And I think in other people, it really depends on what their intention is, because we talk about intentions a lot in my work as well. But I think in general, it's just like, people feel more calm. People feel more at ease. There's a glow to them. They feel more connected to themselves, their bodies, able to regulate their emotions better because they have this awareness of what their body's telling them. And as a result, it helps to create these deeper connections and more meaningful connections with other people as well. Yeah.
I know you've also studied somatics. I guess it's a beautiful blend of what you do then with people being able to read the body and being able to see where, trauma or things or tension is stored in the body. How have you incorporated that into your Tantra practice?
Yeah. The thing that actually inspired me to study somatic sexology was because I was doing these sessions with people and, people were coming in with a lot of emotional baggage or traumas or, whatever else it might have been, that they were using Tantra and tantric massage as a modality to try and release that in some way. And I was like, I need to, get myself qualified and learn more about this and on how to actually support this process. So the somatics is very much helped me to read more about body language and to kind of understand where people are at and guide them in a way that is safe and grounded and, kind of holding space for whatever they might be processing. So it's all very nonverbal. It's not like a therapy session or anything like that. It's all done through body work, but there's so many subtleties that you can pick up on over time that the person may not even realize what they're processing in that moment, because it's happening on such a deep subconscious level. But as a practitioner, it's really about reading that and holding space for it, which I'm sure you can relate to as well.
Yeah, and I think we discussed this, when I originally met you, that I was wanting to train in Somatic. So I've started my journey to doing that because I get a lot of people with trauma issues, people trying to work through things. Also, because I'm working with the body, it was just such a beautiful union of like, okay, I'm actually already doing this work. So, and I want to get more and more into it. And you're right, people aren't aware of a lot of the time of what they're storing in their body. And we have, traditionally we think of therapy and talking, which I also, I see a psychotherapist, have done for a decade. And there's so much value in that. But we also need to realize there's therapy to be done in the body as well. And I think it has been maybe neglected a little bit until recently, where people think, okay, if I've got an issue, I need to go and talk it out with someone or do that kind of thing. Or there's different type of techniques or like attachment theories and things like that. But it's like, okay, but where is this actually storing in your body? Where I think a lot about, gut issues these days. There's a lot of people with gut issues. I've suffered from gut issues since I was in my teenage years. And looking at how is this connected? Where is this coming from? Like, what is this body connection? What am I neglecting? What is not being nurtured here? And so you're right. It is, it's a very interesting thing to witness. And I love the fact that it's becoming more and more known and people are more and more interested in that area. I want to leave with you just giving people some tips and tricks for not a Tantra date night with their partner. I actually want them to have a Tantra date night with themselves, because I don't think I I date myself sometimes. Like I'll take myself out like to the park and do whatever. What is some things that people could do, like set up a little Tantra date night for themselves? What's some little things they could do?
Great one. There's so many things you could do. I think the first thing is like really creating an intentional space. So I always start with space, like make sure it's nice and warm and, nice soft lighting, nice music, maybe some incense burning or something like that, making it very sensual. So there's something to feed all of your senses. But then as a practice, yoni or lingam gazing is actually a really great one. And this is a really nice way to connect to your sexual energy and to your body in a new way and in a very intimate way. And so many people aren't really familiar with, what their genitals look like close up. Other people see them close up, but we don't. And what they smell like, what they taste like. And I think for that reason, we can carry a lot of shame and embarrassment about our genitals. And so lingam and yoni gazing is a tantric practice where you take a handheld mirror and you gaze lovingly at your genitals. You touch, you get to know all the different areas and the parts. You might want to, smell, taste what they're like. And then that can kind of then lead into a self yoni or lingam massage where you set an intention for that massage. And so intentions are often, I'm going to orgasm, but let's take that off the table. And what other intention could you bring to that massage? It could just be to experience, to really explore through touch what your genitals feel like. It could just be to play or to give yourself love, whatever it might be. So that's a really nice practice that you could do. If that feels too much, you could just do like a yoni or lingam meditation, which has 3 stages. The first one, you bring your awareness to your genitals. You just notice their presence. You notice the sensations that are there all the time. The second stage is starting to direct breath into your genitals. So by doing so, that you're directing prana and starting to awaken that life force energy or that sexual energy. And the third stage is bringing your hand and cupping your genitals, just holding it there, taking a few breaths to that sensation. And and you could experiment with different pressure and move it around a little bit. And then that can also then, lead into a genital massage for yourself. But yeah, there are a couple of ideas for a tantric date night for yourself. It could be like a beautiful self-erotic massage. So, preparing things that have different textures like feathers, fabrics, a fork, maybe some warm massage oil, and yeah, just kind of exploring your body through touch and different sensations.
That's a lot of really good suggestions. I'll be definitely having another Tantra date night with just myself. Thank you so much for joining us today. If anyone wants to reach out with Ania at Som, I'll put the details in below. But also, I highly encourage everyone to at least experience one tantric massage in their life. So please, if you do yourself one thing for the remainder of 2024, do that. And thanks for joining. As always, stay kinky.